Hi, everyone. I would like to introduce you to Dan Pace, the founder of First Financial. Dan, welcome.
Thank you, Lance. It's a pleasure to be here and looking forward to it.
Well, for anyone who's not familiar with you, can you share a little bit about First Financial and how you guys got started?
Sure, I can. I'll try to go as quickly as I can, but there's nothing I like talking more about than me and my company, obviously. But uh, First Financial started, actually, it's been 25 years, but it's really been 30 years. I started it as a smaller entity in equipment leasing arena back when I was an entrepreneur in the fitness industry. So I started my own direct leasing business. And for 5 years, that's all we did was equipment leasing. And we still do that today, believe it or not. It's always been a wonderful program to help people who need vehicles and extra equipment. But after that period, a lot of people started wanting to borrow just money. Uh, Unfortunately, I didn't have enough money back then to just loan people money. So we actually hooked up with the SBA because I was working for a major bank at that time as well. And we learned everything there was about SBA and conventional loans, and we became a preferred lender of SBA and an SLO, which packages loans. So, we had every product in place. And like I said, that was 25 years ago. Seems just like yesterday, but we've put a couple $1 billion of funds out on the street for startup businesses or resale of businesses. So, First Financial is really known for its SBA nowadays. It's equipment leasing, and we're very franchise and I'd like to say consultant coaches driven through different organizations because that's where most of our business comes from. And the secondary market is really just it's referrals because we've done a good job with somebody and they said, call Dan or call Karen or call whoever at First Financial and they'll figure out how to get your loan done for you. So that's kind of a short story of First Financial, how we got started. And I hope that works for everybody.
Well, perfect. And what would you say that makes First Financial different from other franchise lending platforms?
Okay. It's a good question. And it's sometimes it's challenging for me because I don't look at other organizations as a competitor. There are in any given year, and I know this is hard to understand, especially in the SBA arena, with all the lending institutions are out there, there's $100 billion a year that goes out in SBA financing. There's lenders out there, the big lenders that everybody knows because you bank with them. They do $3-4 billion a year themselves in loans for people and businesses. But I think where First Financial has fit is we have our niche market. We know what we're good at. I'm not going out and doing these $10 million projects. That's not what we're good at. Uh, we're good at the up to $4 or $5 million type of projects, but our bread and butter is that 350 to 500 range, and then the smaller express loans. But what makes us better is the fact that we have 150 years of experience within my office in the banking and finance industry. We have another 50 years of accounting background, either in CPA, forensic accountant, public accountant. So my staff knows everything that there is to know about what we do and and we also find out and we know about what the franchise wants. We ask them, what kind of program do you need? We structure programs for each individual franchise that needs something special. If they need 6 months interest only, then we're going to put a program together that's going to give them 6 months interest only. If they need 9, if they don't need any, maybe they just need a small express loan. We work one-on-one, not only with the client, but with the Zors to make sure that it's a right fit for them and it's a right fit for us. And I think that's the special thing about it. You call here, somebody picks up and talks to you. We don't wait 3 days to call you back. If they do, I guarantee you they won't be here the next time they call if I find out. I'm a really driven, organized person, and I want my staff to be the same way, and they are. It's a big thing for people. I don't care if you're. It's new. If you're going out and opening a business, it's scary for people. I want to take that scare away and know that you're financially going to be able to handle it and support it. And that's what we do here. We're just not the guys who loan you the money, never talk to you again. We're oriented, we're driven. And, I have a famous saying, if somebody asked me to go a mile, I go 2 miles just to make sure it's right. And my staff is the same way. And I think that's what puts us not above anybody else, not better than anybody else, but puts us where we're at today and still in business for 25 years and billions of dollars of loans funded. So I tell people it can't hurt to try us, right? We're here if somebody needs us. So that's my scenario on why we're who we are.
Mm. Well, one of the things that I wanted to talk about that you brought up there, which is, I think, extremely important, and I really don't hear about it in other places, is putting interest-only payments up front so that you give the business owner a chance to get profitable. Because when they first start out, they're going to run into that period of time where they have less money coming in from the business because it's new. And so at that time, you actually have lower loan payments just to get them through that gap. Can you talk about that? Because I think that's important.
Sure, sure. We just well, it's been a while, but recently to me, let's say the last 12 months, uh, before I break programs, I like to test them in the marketplace. So in other words, I don't want to go out to a major franchisor, whoever it may be, and say, hey, here's a program, let's run with it. We kind of get clients and we test it out. And it worked well. As we all know, interest rates are high right now. They're not historically high, but they're high. And uh, I called it, when I put this in place, I called it as a way to get the people off the wall. Okay. Your average newbie guy who's out there is like, God, now what do I do? Interest rates are going up. I really want to start this business. So I call it setting on the wall or setting on the fence, kind of wait to see what's going to happen. The 9 months, the 6 months, 9 months, whatever we put it in place. Let's talk about the 9 because that's what everybody's been doing lately. Uh, we call them the dream loans. It gives people time to build the business and it saves them a substantial amount of money. To give you an example, if we did a loan for $350,000, okay, and we give them 9 months of interest only, it's a 120-month term loan. We're going to give you 9 months of interest only and only on what you borrow during that 9 month period. So if you're doing a construction loan for your building that you're opening and you only borrow $100,000, you're only paying interest on $100,000. It's pretty simplistic. When the equipment comes, then we finance that, then you pay on that. So, but if we were to run it as a total, it saves you about $14,000 in monthly payments during that first 9 month period. And it varies with the size of the loans. We do the 9 months of interest only for any loan from $250,000 up to $1 million. Uh, and when you start really crunching the numbers, Lance, 12 grand is a lot when you're a new business. 14
Yeah.
grand is a lot when you're even 7 or 8,000 is a lot when you're in a new business. Uh, and it gives them the time to do what? You said it. It gives them the time to gear up the business in case something doesn't work. Maybe your marketing was wrong 1 month and you didn't bring in the business that you thought. You at least know that payment's staying there and it's an interest only, and there's extra money for you to use to build the brand. And, I have a funny saying, I tell people when I talk to them all the time, listen, if you can't at least break even at the end of 9 months, paying interest only, something's wrong. Where did you go wrong? And if you get to me at month 6, we can figure it out, But if it's a franchise, your franchisor should be there to help you figure it out because they want you to profit too. But that loan has been a real driving factor in the last 6 months. It's that 350 to $1 million. It's probably up about 22% in my portfolio, where more and more people are coming and taking advantage of those. So it's exciting. There's nothing better than seeing somebody that opens their business and starts to make money and says to us, thank you for the 9 months interest only, because it put us where we needed to be. So it is fantastic.
You can't go wrong by having extra capital. You just don't want to have too little capital for
It,
sure.
that's for sure. And I will never let that happen either. I'm a big fan of reading FDDs, and just because an FDD says you need X amount, once we chat, anybody in my office, once we really chat and go through it, if I see that you need more working capital to operate that business, we're going to put it in your loan for you. We're just not going to stay in that box if we feel it's going to cost you more than what the FDD say.
Mm-hmm. Well, you talked about multiple products, from equipment leasing to SBA loans and stuff. Can you kind of list out the general products you have and why people would pick each one? Like what would make sense to have this kind of product versus this?
Okay. We do a lot of different things. SBA, let's talk SBA first. I'll just briefly hit on each one. Lenders can pick names for whatever they want. We can call any loan product what we like to call it, but they're all a product of the 7A SBA loan programs. Okay. Be it the Express, be it the Dream, be it the Big Ticket. The only other different SBA loan is a 504, and a 504 is basically for the purchase of real estate. You want to move your business into it, or you want to open a business and buy the building, or ground up construction. I'm seeing a boom in that. I'll be perfectly honest, because people are tired of spending some big money for building out other people's locations, obviously. So we have those programs all in place. We're primarily known for the Express loan. The Express loan is just a quick, simple product. And if I look, let me take one little step back. I try to mirror what I do with all these organizations I belong to. And if you go to any of these organizations, the coaches, the consulting organizations, they have a stable of 500-600 franchises. I have a stable of 500 or 600 franchises that we work with. And when you start looking at those numbers, 60% of them are franchises that you can get into via either home-based business or a small warehouse or whatever you may need, that only cost all in $150,000. That program has been a bread and butter program for startup businesses. I'll give you an example. Last year, 2022, I just got the numbers. I think we discussed it before. I believe it was $57 million in Express loans that we funded. That's $100,000 to $150,000 loan. $57 million of those. That means we put 560 some people, startup businesses, in business just in 2022. It's a fantastic product. They're all 10-year terms. There's no prepayment penalties. And it puts people in business. And the best part about it is it's not a lot of debt service for people. All in, to give you an example, it's probably about $2,200, $2,300 a month your debt service to open up your own business. It's minimal monies. That's one of those programs that drives the business. But we found that there's another 40 or 50% of franchises that cost more money. All right. They go anywhere from $250 to $350. Thus, that reason we put that Dream loan together. That Dream loan from $250 up to $350, not only do you get 9 months free, of interest only, not free, I should say. To me, that's free, the way I look at it. When I started my businesses, nobody gave me 9 months of interest only. But you have 9 months of interest only setting there. Okay. It's a 10-year term. Once again, no prepayment penalties. And there's no collateral. There's no collateral on the express. There's no collateral up to 350. What collateral means, Lance, is real simple. I'm not taking your house that you're setting in right now and putting a lien on it. I'm not taking anything but your personal guarantee and putting a lien on the business. It's unsecured monies up to that 350 number. Okay. To me, that's unheard of, especially in this environment. This is a tougher environment. Everybody knows that. Some lenders are not lending for all different types of products. We're aggressive. We know our brands. We know our clients, and we're helping. So that those two products have just been skyrocketing because you don't have to. I laugh because you don't have to go to your wife and say, "Yes, sweetie, I want to start this business, but they want to put a lien on my house, our house." And that's not happening, so to speak. I shouldn't do it that way, but I like to have a sense of humor. So that product has been another game changer out there. Now, when you start getting over that, that's when we start looking. Those bigger ticket loans, we start looking for some collateral outside, but it really depends on the franchise. If you're buying a franchise that has X amount of equipment with it, that becomes collateral. So that's a different story. But if you're buying a franchise that virtually has no equipment, then we're going to look for a little bit of outside collateral. But if you don't have it, that doesn't mean that you're not going to get a loan, where you just follow the guidelines that the SBA puts in place. But those four products are SBA. We also look at conventional loans, but conventional right now are a little tighter to do. And most of what I'm doing on the conventional marketplace is real estate. People wanting to buy a building and don't want to go SBA or don't really qualify for an SBA because the business is bringing in too much money. But that product will come back eventually when rates start coming down a little bit. Along with that, we have our own My Franchise CPA group that helps people incorporate, can help you with your taxes, can get your licensing, your permit, can do all of that for you nationwide. That was something I talked to franchisors about, and they said people need help. And believe me, once again, it all goes back to that philosophy that we're there to try to take some of that tension away from people. I always encourage people to go to our website. I'm sure you'll have it posted somewhere, Lance. Just because there's so many things we do. We even have a credit restoration department. We have a holding and investment department. We have a rollover department. If somebody wants to touch their retirement accounts and roll out, my background is more in the equipment leasing and the SBA side. So I'm a firm believer of I bring in the people that I need to bring in to be able to handle all the products. Thus, when I said earlier about the years of experience, there's really a lot more years than what I'm saying. But I think we talked about this too, Lance. My wife doesn't allow me to say how old she is, so I can't add her years in. So, but it's all about putting products in place that are going to help people get in business. That's what it comes down to. And the more things I put out there, I honestly don't believe there isn't anything I don't have there that even if you don't want to do a loan with us, you still have our CPA group you can work with, or vice versa. You don't have to use anybody we have there, but it's there as an added tool to help somebody become successful in their business.
Right. And we'll definitely send people. There's a link next to this video you can click on and go right to First Financial's website. We'll collect everything and connect you with the right people. I have worked with Dan and Karen and the people over there. They're wonderful. The one thing I want to talk to people is, when I would work with a new client, they were just like, well, I'm just going to work with my local bank. And I just found that people don't have the success, and they don't understand. They think a bank is a bank, a loan is a loan. I've worked with these people, and my bank always says, yes, of course we can do that. Of course we can do that. And then at the end of the day, it doesn't actually happen. Can you speak to the difference between franchise specific funding, people that do this day in, day out, and your traditional local retail bank?
Sure. Uh, I didn't come from the retail side of banking. I've always been in what we call the wholesale side. That's the loan origination side. I'm not one of these guys that cares if you open up a bank account or use our credit cards or do that type of thing. But what happens is retail banking is designed for certain types of products. Just like I have my products, retail has their products. I don't give, we we look at origination for loan. On the retail side, they're looking for your checking account. They want to give you a credit card. They want to do your mortgage. They want to introduce you to their investment group so you can invest money in their bank. Very few lending institutions, and I don't care who you go to or whatever the size is, actually has a person inside the bank that does SBA loans or really conventional loans. It's all done outside because that's not what your local bank does. Now, I'm not saying a local bank won't give you a loan, but most of them don't even specifically deal with SBA loans or conventionals. And a lot of them do not do anything or understand franchising. So they don't look at it as we do because we have that relationship with the franchisors. And the other thing is they don't like startups. A startup to me is a newbie, in case people don't understand. That means you just want to go out and start a new business and you've never owned one. You're a startup person and you need extra help to get that business up and running. Most lending institutions don't like to do startups, even though the SBA is designed for that. That doesn't mean that a particular lending institution likes to do them. A lot of them only do existing businesses. And the other thing that I find interesting is not everybody likes every business. You could walk into your local bank and they love the restaurant business, but they're not doing a gym, or they're not going to do a car deal, or they're not going to do this. So it's being specific. And what I do and what a lot of other companies do is we're not brand specific. We have the franchises that we work with. We bring in new franchises every month, whoever wants to be part of us. We vet them, make sure that there's somebody that we want to work with. And we understand that process. We understand what it is. That local bank, I got to be honest, I did the same thing. I went to my local bank when I went to open up my first fitness center. I didn't get a loan. The only way I got my loan is my dad had to sign for me, and I was quite young back then, and I still didn't get it from our local bank. So it really was going out there, and I had to find a lending institution that was familiar with my industry and was familiar with doing startup businesses. And it wasn't an easy task. That's why I laugh. I paid 20% interest back in 1984 when I opened up my first franchise. And I was happy. Nowadays, nobody's paying that rate, but I went through that same process, and taking that process made it easier. I now make it easier for everybody else because you don't have to even leave your house. Everything is done via speaking on the phone, doing Zoom like we're doing right now, or DocuSign, because we're nationwide. So I'm not seeing everybody other than maybe on the screen or talking. When you're with your local bank, it's a hit and miss. And the thing that bothers me the most is because they go to their local bank and get declined, they think they can't get a loan somewhere else. Please don't have that misconception. That just means that that institution doesn't like what you want to do or doesn't understand what you want to do. There are plenty of lending banks and lending institutions out there. I'm not just plugging me, but there's plenty out there that are willing to look at startup businesses. You just got to do your due diligence.
Right. Yep. And looking at what they'll accept and what they won't accept, You just got to work with the right people who are looking for what you have and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, it, it's it's all about packaging. Lance is the word that banking institutions. You have to be able to put everything together in a neat, readable fashion. Let's say, so it does get approved. That's one of the things that we do. We spend that time, and it's called packaging and making sure everything is correct and everything is signed and everything is done before it's submitted to credit to underwrite.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you have some some brands that you can share with us, or some stories about how you've helped some brands really take off? Because some of them all start with a few units, but then with the right lender team, because you're really part of a team, right? We have the franchisee, and whether or not they're working with a consultant, and the franchisor and the lender. Really, everybody together is working together to help you vet this, make sure it's right, and get you what you need to get off the ground and get going. But yeah. So, do you have any stories or brands that you guys have really helped?
There's multiple brands. I won't mention their names, but I'm an emerging brand builder.
Hmm.
I have some franchises that I'll give you a great one. This one I know I can talk about. I'm personally, my portfolio is in the medical industry. I do a franchise called American Family Care, urgent care centers. When I started, there was one location in Townsend, Maryland with them. We're up to 315 locations now. It's been about 8 years, but we're on track for probably 500 within the next couple of years. And these are big ticket things. These aren't just, they're a couple million all in type of things. But then I've taken companies like, let's say, Bio One, for example. They weren't even on the SBA directory. We got them on the directory at no charge. We went out there. They're at 600 franchises now. It's amazing what you can do if you know. And I've always been a fan of it. Knowledge is a key to power. If you know something and you teach it to somebody and they use it, uh, you just grow and grow and grow. And there's nothing like taking a company that doesn't even have a franchisee yet. They got one location open that's theirs. Just because they're the franchisor doesn't mean they understand everything about getting people loans and do it. That's not their business. I don't understand everything about franchising, but I learn it as I learn the brand. And to take an emerging brand and to get them even over 100 locations, and you know this because you're in the industry, that's a great thing to do. Uh, I have brands that I've worked with over 25 years and have a few thousand locations opened. Uh, the only thing I find is uh, once I start and we start building them up and they start doing well, they really don't need my money anymore, my bank's money. Let's put it that way, because they come financially successful themselves and they just don't need that type of lending, which is a great thing for them, but not such a great thing for me because I'd love to keep lending to them. But uh, yeah, that's it's such a wonderful feeling when you get guys. And I just met with two new emerging brands this week, a deli and an automotive oil changing company that we're going to bring in. And I feel that I can build their brand if we can get the dollar amounts and everything set up right. Those are my next thing that I look at and say, okay, let's get these guys on the right track. Let's put X amount of dollars aside, knowing that they're going to bring us in this business. And that's how I look at it. I spend the same time talking to franchisors as I do with coaches. That's how I figure out what they need. You don't tell me you need 250 to open if it's really 400. So we structure everything. Each franchisor has a different story and may need a different type of program put in place. Hopefully they don't all, but if they do, we're there to do it. So that's the best way to answer it for you is there's so many out there that we brought to fruition. I even ones that we brought to that have been purchased out after they've had 200 and 300 franchises. They're no longer owned by the same groups. Uh, And that's a common practice in the industry now. Some of these guys come in and buy out the successful smaller franchises, and hopefully I get to continue working with them. So yes, it's exciting.
Well, last couple questions I
Sure.
think that would be on people's minds is, can you walk us through the major milestones of someone getting their loan from, submitting things, letter of intent and all that down to, funded, just so they can get an idea what the process will be?
Okay. To be honest with you, Lance, it kind of varies with the type of loan that they're looking for. Uh, a basic express loan, I can pre-qualify you in a couple hours. I can actually physically approve you because it's all done with an algorithm program. And remember, the express is at 150. But we can approve you within about 20 minutes because it's done through a computer scoring system. Depending on if it's a home-based business or a brick and mortar, it should close in no longer than 30 days. The funds would actually be wired into your account. The only thing that can slow it up is the time it takes you to go to your training, get your certificate, and do all that with the franchisor side. We're constantly working with everybody while that's going on. The only other thing that can deter any loan, to be honest, is when there is construction involved. If we're doing build out on somebody's new business, uh, we're at the hands of getting the permits from the state that you're in, getting the build out quotes. I like to tell people if everything was in place, I can approve you within 4 business days and close your loan within 60 days. Sometimes it happens. It always happens in the express side quickly. That's why it's called an express loan, because we don't have to get as much information. But when you start getting into the 250s up into the millions of dollars, it takes time, but not to get pre-approved. I encourage anybody, whoever you're using, get pre-approved first and make sure it's a pre-approval that somebody's underwritten, you know, uh, so before you go ahead and pay Mr. Franchisor that that those funds are going to be available. You know what the down payment is. You know what the rate is. You know if there's any additional collateral. You know all these things before you make that decision. The way I like to say it is anybody who's ever bought a home, okay, usually before you go out and start looking at homes, you do what? You call your bank or you go to a mortgage broker and you get pre-approved for a certain loan amount. You do the same thing when you're doing a business. It's just a little bit different and a little bit quicker. You upload all your documents, we approve you, we issue you what you mentioned, that letter of interest. At that point, that's when you go get incorporated. That's when you give a deposit to your franchisor. And we're working through everything. Here at First Financial, we have what we call tech support people and relationship managers. And they're with you from the first call all the way through to the money's wired into your bank account on any of the loans that we do. We have our own construction department. We have our own fund control departments, the same people that we work with. So it depends on the loans, but normally expresses are 30 days, dream loans up to 350, the non-collateral 60 days if you have a location. If you're still, a lot of these people, Lance, you got to remember, we're pre-approving and approving, and they really don't have a location yet. So we might have to sit back 4 or 5 months while the franchisor physically finds a location for them. Could be longer than that, could be shorter. So that's why it's hard to pinpoint. But if everything were to be in place, I don't care if it's 100,000 or 5 million, it shouldn't take more than 60 days to physically approve and close a loan. It falls back into everybody else's hands. So that's the easiest way to explain it.
Right. Well, and as we look at those ideal timelines, I do know that, when you work with the borrowers, the clients that are looking to get a loan, what they don't realize is they hear that 30 or 60-day timeline, but they don't understand what you're saying. That's when they're turning stuff around to you right when you give it to them. If they take 2 weeks to turn a document around and you're at phase 1 of the process, they're not going to close in 30 days. That's like
No.
if they're sending it back the same day, the next day or whatever, after they're staying on top of it. But if they just go dark, don't communicate, and they take a week to return stuff, not only is it going to take longer, but the bank is going to go, these people aren't really like moving quickly, and you're going to get pushed to the back of the pile, and somebody else that's moving fast is going to get the juice.
Yeah, we kind of look at it as they're not really committed to the project. And I understand everybody has remorse, but we sent it out. It's not that much information, especially for the pre-approval, that you can't get it back. That if you're not interested in finding out if you're really going to be, and I shouldn't say it this way, but it's the truth. If you're really not interested in finding out what amount you can be approved for before you find a franchise, then you're not really interested in buying a franchise. It's kind of how I look at it.
Right, because you don't know if you can even afford it. You're just looking at random things that you can't afford, and it's not really like a process of buying something. Just like with a house, you want to know, what's my number? I need to buy something for that amount or less.
Yeah, I have to stay in that price range. You're absolutely correct. And we try to educate people on that aspect of it. But, everybody has their dream. I get it. If I can make it work, I would make it work. But if I only qualify you for 250 and you go find a business for 500, there's not much I can do unless it's a resale and the owner wants to hold a note or something. But that pre-approval really gives you the gusto to be able to say, okay, I can get any of these franchises because I'm already approved, and I don't really. And most of the time, we approve you for what we believe you're going to, what you could qualify for. That doesn't mean you have to take that much. You might only want 150, but you qualify for $500,000. At least you have an idea of what you qualify for if something does pop up. But you are right. People get complacent. And our job is to try to stay on top of them without irritating anybody, because it's pressure for them. But getting those forms, that's important because they become outdated too. If you send me a PFS today and you don't move forward for 120 days, that PFS isn't good anymore. Now you got to start that whole process all over again. So we do try to stay on people. If they choose not to get it back to us, Lance, there's not a whole lot we can do. We go back to the franchisor or the coach who referred him to us and say, you might want to reach out to them and see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So we're always in communication with somebody.
Right. Well, thank you for everything you shared today, Dan. That was, I think, incredibly useful information and great insights into your company. For anybody who'd like to work with Dan or the team over at First Financial, you can just go to the link next to this video or go to franpro.vip/First Financial. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate you, and thanks for the time.
Always a pleasure.